The security footage from that December morning shows a man in a mask, calm and deliberate, waiting outside a Manhattan hotel before opening fire on a healthcare executive. If this story grips you the way it's gripped millions, hit that like button, drop a comment. Share this with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe because we're just getting started. Within hours, the entire country would know the victim's name, Brian Thompson, CEO of one of America's largest health insurance companies. Gunned down on a busy New York street in what investigators immediately knew wasn't random. This was planned, this was personal, and the killer left a message. At the crime scene, detectives found shell casings marked with 3 chilling words: deny, defend, depose. Not random etchings, not gang symbols. These were terms ripped straight from the playbook insurance companies allegedly used to reject claims, to deny coverage, to let people suffer while profits soar. The message was clear. This wasn't just murder, this was a statement, and whoever pulled the trigger wanted the world to know exactly why. But the killer vanished into the chaos of morning rush hour, slipping through one of the most surveilled cities on Earth like a ghost. The NYPD launched a manhunt that would span state lines, deploying facial recognition, canvassing hundreds of hours of footage, tracing his movements through bus terminals and coffee shops. And then, nearly a week later, 5 days of silence. A tip came in from an employee at a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. A young man sitting alone, wearing a mask, acting nervous. When officers approached, they found him carrying a ghost gun, a silencer, fake IDs, and a handwritten manifesto. His name was Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, Ivy League graduate, from a wealthy, respected family, and according to that manifesto, he believed the healthcare system had become so corrupt, so predatory, that violence was the only language it would understand. But here's where the story stops being simple, because Luigi wasn't some hardened criminal with a record. He was brilliant, valedictorian, computer science degree from an elite university. By all accounts, he had everything ahead of him. So what happened? What broke inside him? Investigators began digging into his past and found something dark. Chronic back pain, debilitating, life-altering, and a healthcare system that, according to those close to him, failed him over and over again, denied treatments, delayed surgeries. Trapped in a labyrinth of paperwork and appeals while his condition worsened, friends say he became obsessed, consumed by rage at an industry he believed valued profit over human life. He stopped showing up, stopped answering calls, disappeared into online forums where others shared stories of medical bankruptcies, denied claims, loved ones who died waiting for approvals. And somewhere in that spiral, Luigi Mangione made a choice that would end one life, destroy his own, and ignite a national conversation that nobody saw coming. Because when his arrest hit the news, something unexpected happened. Social media exploded, not with outrage at the killer, but with something far more unsettling: support. Thousands of people calling him a hero, a martyr, someone who finally fought back against a system they believed was killing them slowly, legally. And with a smile, GoFundMe pages appeared, merchandise, memes, people sharing their own horror stories of denied treatments, of watching family members suffer because an algorithm decided their life wasn't worth the cost. And in that moment, Luigi Mangione stopped being just a suspect. He became a symbol. But symbols are dangerous, because behind the manifestos and the message-laden bullet casings, there's a prosecutor building a case, and the charges are stacking up: first-degree murder, terrorism, and in New York, that could mean life without parole, or worse. The trial is coming, the evidence is damning. But the question that haunts investigators, legal experts, and the millions watching isn't just whether Luigi Mangione will be convicted. It's what his story says about the breaking point of a nation, about desperation, about rage that's been simmering for years beneath the surface. And this is only chapter 1, because what happened in that courtroom, the defense strategy, the evidence the prosecution doesn't want you to see, and the chilling details Luigi himself revealed, that as a story that goes so much deeper than anyone expected. The full investigation is right here on this channel. The courtroom was packed the day Luigi Mangione was arraigned, but what happened outside those walls was something nobody could have predicted. Crowds gathered. Not protesters demanding justice for Brian Thompson, not mourners grieving a murdered CEO. These were supporters, people holding signs that read "Free Luigi" and "Healthcare is a human right." Some wore masks with his face printed on them, others chanted his name like he was some kind of revolutionary hero. And inside that courtroom, Luigi sat silent, shackled, staring straight ahead as the charges were read: murder in the first degree, terrorism, weapons, possession. The prosecutor painted him as a cold-blooded killer who stalked his victim for days, planned every detail, and executed a man in broad daylight without hesitation. But Luigi's defense team had a different story to tell. They didn't deny he pulled the trigger. They couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming. What they argued was why. Because in the weeks before the shooting, Luigi had spiraled into what his lawyers called a mental health crisis brought on by chronic pain, failed medical treatments, and a system that abandoned him. They presented medical records showing years of suffering, consultations with specialists who recommended surgery, insurance claims denied again and again, appeals rejected with copy-paste responses that felt automated and human. His defense wasn't trying to excuse what he did. They were trying to explain it. To show the jury that Luigi Mangione wasn't born a killer, he was made into one by a system that broke him down piece by piece until he snapped. But the prosecution fired back hard. They brought in digital forensics experts who traced Luigi's online activity in the months before the murder, and what they found was chilling. He'd been researching Brian Thompson for weeks, studying his schedule, his routes, his security detail. He'd visited forums where people discussed violence against corporate executives, downloaded manifestos from past extremists, watched videos on how to build untraceable firearms. This wasn't a breakdown. This was premeditation. This was terrorism. And then came the manifesto itself, the handwritten pages found in Luigi's backpack when he was arrested. Investigators read excerpts in court, and the language was haunting. He wrote about a war between the powerful and the powerless, about how the American healthcare system killed more people each year than any mass shooter ever could, but did it legally, quietly, with paperwork instead of bullets. He wrote that Brian Thompson wasn't just a man, he was a symbol of everything wrong with the industry, and killing him was the only way to make people pay attention. The courtroom fell silent as those words hung in the air, because here's the thing, Luigi wasn't wrong about the numbers. Tens of thousands of people die each year because of denied claims, delayed treatments, medical debt that forces them to choose between medication and rent. The data backed him up. The law doesn't care about data when you've committed murder. And that's where this case became something bigger than just one man on trial. It became a referendum on American healthcare itself. Legal experts started debating whether Luigi could claim a necessity defense, arguing that he believed his actions were necessary to prevent greater harm. Others pointed to jury nullification, the idea that a jury could acquit him not because he's innocent, but because they believe the system he attacked is more guilty than he is. But the prosecution wasn't going to let that happen. They brought in Brian Thompson's family, his wife, his children. People who didn't care about policy debates or corporate greed. They just wanted their husband and father back, and watching them testify, watching them break down on the stand, the courtroom was reminded of something crucial. No matter what Luigi believed, no matter what message he thought he was sending, Brian Thompson was a human being. He had a life, a family, and now he's gone. As the trial moved forward, more evidence emerged. Security footage showing Luigi practicing with the ghost gun in the woods. Receipts proving he traveled to New York days before the shooting. Text messages to friends that hinted at something dark on the horizon. Messages they didn't understand until it was too late. And then the prosecution played their ace. A jailhouse recording, because after his arrest, Luigi made calls from prison. And in one of those calls, speaking to someone he thought he could trust, he said something that would seal his fate. He said he'd do it again, that if he had the chance, if he could go back, he wouldn't change a thing, because someone had to make them pay attention, someone had to make them scared. The defense tried to suppress the recording, argued it was taken out of context, but the damage was done, because in that moment, Luigi Mangione stopped being a victim of a broken system and became exactly what the prosecution said he was from the beginning, a terrorist. But here's what keeps people awake at night. The trial isn't over. The jury is still deliberating. And outside that courthouse, the crowds haven't gone away. If anything, they've grown, because for every person who sees Luigi as a murderer, there's someone else who sees him as a symptom of something much darker, a warning sign that went ignored until it exploded into violence. So what happens next? What does the jury decide? And what does it mean for a country that can't agree on whether Luigi Mangione is a villain or a martyr? The verdict is coming, and when it drops, everything changes. You'll want to see how this ends, because what happens in that courtroom might just reshape how we talk about justice, healthcare, and desperation in America. Stay with us, because this story is far from over.